Now, folk, I just mentioned that some of the things I say is going to be controversial. You might notice the ocean is basically level and flat. I'm going to depict the ocean. How do you get some water to rise higher than the ocean level? You've got to put it in a container, and then once you get it in a container, the container has to have a bottom and walls. What does this have to do with today's lesson? It turns out it's going to have quite a bit to do with today's lesson. The Romans the Romans were higher in civilization than most other people of their time. And they allowed uncivilized people in, and the uncivilized people brought their civilization down, and folk nearly changed Western Europe into a bunch of tribal people who did not know how to read or write and had lost all ability to learn. They came close to it. They didn't quite, but they came really close to destroying Western civilization as we know it. And folk, if they had actually destroyed Western civilization, you younger people won't see it. Honestly, I don't think the automobile would ever have been invented, the airplane, the light bulb, the air conditioner, the central heat unit. I don't think we'd have any of that. We'd have come to school on horseback. And you talk about pollution, the average horse generates 45 pounds of manure a day, and that attracts all kinds of flies and mosquitoes and vermin that would have bitten us on the way in, and we'd die a whole lot younger than we are. And you think you have any idea what I'm talking about. You don't. All right? You don't believe me. You think that that's just the natural order of things. No.
Oh, no.
The natural order of things is downhill, folk. This is the way that Europe was heading for a long time. Some of these, we've talked about the Huns. The Huns came from Central Asia. They were not allowed in, but they came in. Finally, a combined army of Germans and Romans defeated them, but not until they had done irreparable damage. Their leader was Attila the Hun. Now, I asked you on your last test, which group of people civilized the persons who overcame them? All right, eventually Europe did. Eventually China did. Unfortunately, the North Americans did not. Some people did not civilize the persons who conquered them. And North America had several high levels of civilization among its Indians, and whoosh, went downhill and never recovered until the Europeans came. And you might say forced civilization on it. At gunpoint, at knife point, call it what you will. But North American Indians were once higher than they were when the white man found them. And I got to say this is in one of the American history books. The American Indians deliberately burned away millions of acres of forest land, and maybe we're about to find out why they did it. They did it because they knew they would be burned alive if they didn't. So when they got to a situation where there was some rain, they could control their fires. They burned away the acreage. And right now in the western part of the country, Oregon and California, we're reaping the benefits of what I really think is bad forest management, allowing millions of trees to sit there and rot and dry out to where they're dying. I had a girl from California disagree with me pretty violently, not violently, pretty loudly when I said that, but that was a few years ago when we had fires then, but these fires are worse. And they're going to get worse until we have to manage, we have to control, we have to take charge. We have to clear away the dead wood in the forest. All right. Now, another group of people were the Vandals. The word vandalism comes from them. They destroyed much of the Roman Empire. They came in and they just stole and looted and vandalized everything in sight, including they got to Rome itself and went and attacked Rome and sacked Rome. It was the first time Rome had been sacked in 800 years. And a lot of persons of that day were very, very unhappy. Hey, what's going on? It was like the world, folk, it would be like Washington, D.C. had been vandalized by a group of foreigners. And you think, hey, the world's coming to an end. Well, the Romans felt that way too. And a lot of persons blame Christianity, and you can if you want to. Nevertheless, all right, I'll say that if you want to blame Christianity for the fall of Rome, you then have to explain how come it was the Christian part of the world that eventually invented all the things that we have today, like the electricity, the air conditioner, the light bulb, the washing machine, the dishwasher. Hardly any of these things were invented outside of Europe.
Good old dishwasher.
What's that?
Good old dishwasher.
Well, I mean, yeah, hey, changes our lives, folks. Very important. Yes, very important. Anyway, the Vandals did a lot of destruction. You had the Angles and Saxons, and together we call them Anglo-Saxon. They went to England and settled in England, and the word Angleland comes from England. Now, before the Angles went to England, the Britons had lived there first. That's why that country is called Great Britain. It's spelled B-R-I-T-A-I-N, not O-N. But the Britons lived there, or it's also called England. Great Britain means England, Scotland, and Wales, and Northern Ireland. That's all of Great Britain. But it gets its name from the Britons who lived there first. But these people came in, and there was nothing that could stop them, seemingly. Now, for 40 years, the Anglo-Saxons were stopped. According to tradition, there was a powerful king who took over England at the time. His name was Arthur, and he had a group of really powerful knights, warriors, called Knights of the Round Table. Now, how many of you have ever read of Arthur and the knight? Okay, a few of you. The most famous knight was Sir Lancelot. Now, some of you will see on the test. Arthur got to be king when he pulled a sword out of the stone that nobody else could pull. He was a boy of 15, and according to one account, his brother had forgotten his sword, and Arthur was sent home to get it. But Arthur thought, hey, I know this sword is wedged in the churchyard, and maybe I can borrow that. And he'd heard that anything that was in the churchyard belonged to the whole community anyway, as long as you put it back when you threw it. So he pulled the sword out of the stone and took it back when his father saw it. Son, where did you get this? I'll put it back. Son, did you pull a sword out of the stone in the churchyard? Well, this, of course, made Arthur the king of England, because the magician Merlin had said whoever can pull this stone is the heir to the throne of England. And Merlin's father was a fallen angel, and Merlin's mother, though, became a Christian. That's why Merlin became a Christian and did not become the Antichrist as Satan wanted. All right, folks, how much of this can you believe? Every one of these ancient peoples began their history with stories just like that. Every one of them. So the Bible was no exception. These people seemingly live close to the spirit world as we do. All right, anyway, the Anglo-Saxons moved in. The Jutes also were part of the group with the Anglo-Saxon people. Some of them also settled in England. Now, the Goths. There were two groups of Goths. The Ostrogoths went to Italy, the Visigoths to Spain. Now, when the Ostrogoths went to Italy, they completely overran the Roman population. Eventually, what was left of the Romans merged and became Italy instead of Rome. The Latin language was replaced by Italian. Italian is related to Latin. I heard this morning there are 5 Latin languages. There's Italian, there's Spanish, there's Portuguese, there's French, and there's Romanian. If any of you know any different, your input is welcome. I know of a couple of Germanic languages, and one of them is English and one of them is German. I believe there are several others, but you have your Germanic languages and you have your Latin languages. And Latin, all right, the Catholic Church tried to revive the Roman Empire and tried to keep the Latin language alive, but to no avail. The Latin language simply died, as did the Roman Empire. But the Catholic Church spent generations trying to keep both of them alive. Italy was to divide. The problem with the Goths, they didn't unite very well. So the Ostrogoths in Italy created several different Italian states that were not united until 1870. As for the Visigoths in Spain, they divided also into several small kingdoms. But what forced them to unite was the Moors, or the Muslims, came up from North Africa, and they conquered much of Spain. And it forced the Visigoths to unite. And then the Visigoths began the process of pushing them out, a process that went on and off for some 800 years. Finally, in 1492, King Ferdinand and his wife Isabella, Ferdinand married Isabella. Isabella inherited Castile from her father, and Ferdinand inherited Aragon from his father. So they put together the Kingdom of Spain. Then they got some weaponry from the rest of Europe that was better than anything that Muslims had, and they drove the last of the Muslims out of Spain in 1492. Then Isabella felt she had enough money left over to finance Christopher Columbus, but that's a different story.
They united what again?
What's that?
They united,
The King Ferdinand and Isabella eventually united Spain. Now, Queen Isabella sent an army into Portugal. The Portuguese were separated from Spain by mountains, and they spoke a different language. And anyway, Queen Isabella's army was defeated. So Portugal remained independent. And it remains independent this day. Again, if you know Portuguese, you can learn Spanish easily. And if you know Spanish, you learn Portuguese easily. But you can't, if you're a Spanish speaker, you don't understand Portuguese without training. Yes?
don't they speak Portuguese in Brazil?
They speak Portuguese in Portugal and in Brazil. But if you look on a map, Brazil is by far the biggest country in Latin America. So it's not, I had a student tell one time the line of demarcation appropriate was trivial. That's not true. That explains why that's south of the border. They speak Spanish everywhere except for a few places where they speak French and English. But the big one is Brazil, where they speak Portuguese. And Brazil is making news here of late. And, I'm following them, believe me, I'm following them closely. All right. The Franks, bear with me, folk, I'm terribly embarrassed. Okay. I forget oftentimes to turn this thing off, and then I forget to turn it on. All right, it won't go off again. All right, now I missed a call from one of your classmates a few weeks ago because I forgot to turn it back on. All right, the Franks. The word Franks means the free. Then we also get the word France from the Franks. Free people. Now, there are persons who have stated that they believe that one of the reasons that Europe developed so well was Europe had a tradition of freedom and limiting the power of its kings more than any other country did. And France spent a long time limiting the power of its kings, and of course, eventually, France will no longer acknowledge it even has a king. But anyway, the one king's name I want you to remember is the name of King Clovis. King Clovis, the main thing he's remembered for, of course, he was one of the few powerful kings. He was of the Merovingian dynasty. And again, France, like other countries, would have a dynasty that would last a few generations and then move on. But anyway, King Clovis was the first king in the West to convert to Roman Catholic Christianity. Now, it's just close. All your Roman emperors before Clovis, who had converted to Christianity, had converted to another form of Christianity that was not Roman Catholic, to Arian Christianity. And I want to say about Arianism, it's the one belief that you won't find in any Christian denomination today. It died, and it died completely. So Arianism is gone. But Clovis was a Roman Catholic, converted to Roman Catholicism. He had his reason to do so. First of all, his wife was Catholic. His prime minister was Catholic. His general, the main general in his army, was also Catholic. More than half his army was also converted to Catholicism. And he just saw that his whole country was heading towards Catholic Christianity. So he, you might say, being a wise king he was, he got on board the bandwagon. And he remained an energetic, hardworking king and a conquering king, and he went out and helped unite France